Welcome back to Rick's Scale Model Fix and part 3 of our Tamiya 1/48 scale Bristol Beaufighter TF Mark 10. So at the end of part 2 we left the build at the primer stage, so just off camera to save a little bit of time I've given the model a good coat of MRP surface primer in grey, and that's given us a nice lovely smooth finish to our upper surfaces and lower surfaces in preparation for our paint scheme. We're going to weather this one up quite severely, for me anyway. It's going to depict its operational environment over the sea. So to that end we're going to pre-shade the undersurface, and I've already made a start with that using Tamiya black. So I'm just going to complete this now. It's always best to try and get it done in one go. I was just going to use a little bit of blue tack just in that recess to secure that entry door. Just so we don't get any tape marks or anything. So I'll continue now with the pre-shading and we'll join you back when I've done. So with the black done all over the airframe, the underneath anyway, it's now time to just influence the paint that we're putting on top even more, and we're just going to do the centres of these panels with a random marble effect in white primer. So any details that you want to highlight, I'm just filling in the centres like that. Struggling a bit with the grip with the airbrush today due to my arthritis in my left hand, but we'll persevere. Sometimes it does a bit shaky. So join me back in a bit when I've completed this and we'll look at getting the sky top coat on. So that's the mottling effect of the undersurface is now complete. It's totally random, bit heavier towards the tail planes and around the engines. So it's on with the top coat now. So for our top coat we're going to use Guns 74 RAF Sky, and this is going to be thinned with self-leveling thinners, and it's going to be very thin. It's going to be 80% thinners to 20% paint, otherwise we run the risk of concealing all that hard work that we've just put in. So after a bit of time we've got this sky undersurfaces complete, and if I bring that up towards the camera, hopefully you can see the variations and the effect that we've been trying to get with that pre-shading. Still not finished yet, we've got another layer of weathering to go, and we just need to add panel line wash. So we're going to use Flory Models Dark Dirt clay based wash for this. So we're actually just going to be adding this to the panel lines. Now I have diluted it because I don't want it too strong. So we're just going to drag it round the panel detail. Let it flow along those panel lines. And the reason I don't want it to be too strong is I don't want to lose the effect of the pre-shading underneath. Especially with it being a light colour. And we can afford to go in a little bit heavier around the flight controls, just to make those stand out slightly more than the surrounding wing. So we're just going to let that wash dry before we remove it. So join me back in a little while and we'll see what results we've obtained. So we've removed the Flory wash with a slightly moist or damp piece of kitchen paper, and we've just given the surface a coat of GX 112 gloss varnish, and that's just to protect the undersurface from the rest of the model assembly and painting. We don't want to destroy any of our hard work that we've done under there to get that well weathered sort of underneath appearance to our Beaufighter. So the next job is to get the top side done, and that's still in primer. So similar sort of methods will be employed to do that. With it being a very dark top surface, pre-shading isn't going to really cut it with the extra dark sea grey, so we're going to be using post-shading method, a bit like the latter part of the process for this underside. So with the undersides dry, we've masked up the demarcation line for the extra dark sea grey, and we're ready to apply the top shade of colour. So like I said before, it's a bit harder to use pre-shading with a darker colour, so we'll go with post-shading with this one. So we'll just set down a nice smooth consistent base coat, and then we'll come in and we'll weather that up with lighter and darker shades and some Tamiya smoke probably, and other bits and pieces. So that's the extra dark sea grey upper surfaces applied. So the model's starting to come to life a little bit now, and we've just made a start very briefly just with a different manufacturer's extra dark sea grey of starting to break up this upper surface, so hopefully you can see that. But it's time to add a bit more exaggeration to that, so we're going to cut that with a bit of white and start really bringing it to life. So we've finished distressing the upper surface of our Beaufighter, and the extra dark sea grey has been weathered back quite a bit, and hopefully you can see the pattern developing across the upper surface of the wings there and around the fuselage and tail end. So it's had a coat of GX112 gloss varnish just to key everything in, and all that's left for me to do with this now is to polish the surface with 12,000 grade micromesh just to get rid of any sort of rough spots, and then we can apply the flory wash and think about getting some decals onto the model. So after quite a bit of time spent painting the Beaufighter, we're now in a position to move on. So we've built up those engine nacelles and added the intakes, and they don't look too bad. We've painted the inside of each of the wheelbase RAF interior green. We've added the wingtip navigation lights, and they just need fairing in slightly. On this side there's a bit of a raised edge, and on the other wing. And we've also added the landing light and painted the recess interior green with some alclad silver to represent the lenses of the lights. Smaller parts wise, we've painted the wheels up, props and spinners. So the next job we've completed, once that landing light lens was dry, the glue, it was just mask that using the Edard mask set. And now we're just shaping the rough corners off this landing light lens just to get a nice wingtip shape. It's not going to need much. In fact, that's it, and then we're just going to polish that up. So, and we're just going to clean that area now, and we've just got some of the paintwork just to sort out there. And this side, same on this side, just to get rid of the slightly rough edges of the separate plastic parts. This side not needing anywhere near as much. And all it does is it's just these little attention to detail areas that just make your model look a little bit more presentable and finished without a great deal of work. So we're just going to spray our interior green onto the upper surface of this landing light, and this is quite a thick mix, just so that it doesn't go under the masking. And then we're going to leave that, and then we're going to repeat on the underside. So we just need to adjust the position of our masking tape slightly. You need to be quite neat with your airbrush. We don't want any massive areas of overspray. And then we're going to repeat on the underside. and then we're going to come in with a bit of MRP primer, and this is just so we don't influence the top coat too much. And again, the same on the undersurface. And we're just going to let that dry off. So the primer's now dry, so we're just going to come in with that sky colour. Building it quite thick because we don't want the plastic to look too transparent. Just coming in with the extra dark sea grey now. So we've done some small jobs with the clear parts there. We're all done now. So that landing light is masked and sprayed, and we just covered the area with some gloss varnish just to blend in the paintwork to the surrounding wing. Painted the port side navigation light in Tamiya clear red, and on the port side in clear green. So that leaves us at a point where we need to break away from the fuselage now, ready for the decals. So we're now starting on a different section of the build, and we're going to be looking at assembling the main gear. These build up to look quite detailed. Tyre halves are in two parts, with the assembly dropping into a insert which then goes into the nacelle. So earlier section in the build I'd managed to glue the wheels together, or the tyres together, and they've been drying. We've then painted those first of all with some Guns Aqueous H72 tyre black, and then we've sprayed the hub with Alclad Duraluminium. So one of the quickest ways I found of getting a nice neat hub is to attach your tyre to the workbench just with a bit of blue tack. We've got one of these plastic circle templates, the correct size, and we just hold that over the wheel hub, making sure it's central and flat, and then just come in with the airbrush and give it a nice quick blast before lifting off. Literally a 2-second job, and the results are quite good. Let the Alclad dry, turn over and repeat. So just make sure that the template is flat and central, and just come in with that silver paint just to do your hub. So there's one wheel completed. All it does need now is a wash just to bring that detail out, but it's a no effort approach to hubs and tyres. There's other various ways you can do this. You can buy the mask sets, you could hand paint it, or even mask it. But to be honest, the templates are cheap, quick and easy. Whilst we had the Alclad in the airbrush, I masked off and did the central parts of the spinners of the props. After first painting those gloss black, so we just need to do the yellow tips to those to complete those. So let's have a look at the other parts of the undercarriage and get that undercarriage leg assembly made up for each side of the aircraft. So let's get these gear legs made up. So they come in 3 parts which make the framework up, which then attaches to the main gear leg. So let's get those made up. So everything does fit nice and neatly together. Just a bit of Tamiya quick setting extra thin. Just let that glue go off for a second. Let it start biting. We can offer the other side up like so. Just hold everything in place while the glue bites. And then this part sits into the recesses on the back of the gear leg. And it is all quite nice and tight. Everything fits where it should. So I'll just give this a bit more extra thin. And then to hold everything in place while the glue actually dries solid, we're going to insert this into the insert for the nacelle. And this is just going to make sure everything sets at the correct angles. Finally glue the other bits in place. And we're going to leave that to dry. So after that undercarriage insert has dried, it was then inserted into the nacelle, which just slides in the recess. The wheel added. I've not glued it shut fast yet. Once it's on its legs, with the tail wheel inserted, we'll put this on the bench, find out where the contact spots are, and we'll just sand some flat spots there. Undercarriage doors just insert into the slots, making up a very neat undercarriage unit. So that's the complete insert made up. And just to tone down the brightness of the aluminium, we've used Tamiya panel line accent in brown, just to give it a bit of a dirtier look. And we're just ready now to insert this straight into the nacelle. And we'll just use the handles, the tweezers, just to push it firmly in place, like so. And that's your undercarriage in. So all we need to do now is add the undercarriage doors and the wheel itself. So to add the wheel, we're just going to carefully prise the oleos out and get the pins in the recesses. I've added the tail wheel. That's been hand painted, and that's the model on its undercarriage. The gear doors were painted at the same time as the fuselage, given that flooring models wash inside and out, and they are just a tab and slot fit. So we're going to use a bit of super glue on these, and they simply slot into their respective recess in that wheel well insert, just holding them slightly while the glue goes off, and job's done. And we're just going to repeat that now for the other side. Just get them to line up in the recess, hold them in the correct position, and let the glue set. And that's our undercarriage done on our Beaufighter. So now we are going to put the model on the workbench. We're going to look to see if we've scratched any of the tyres when we've put them in the undercarriage, and if we have, we're going to turn that to the top to hide behind the leg. I'm going to sit that on the bench and add a good portion of Tamiya extra thin just to glue those wheels in place, and then we're going to sand some flat spots just to stop it looking as though it's on tiptoe tyres. So with those wheels now dry and secure, just while I was waiting for those to dry, the propellers had been painted up and the spinners assembled, and they can be pushed in front of those nacelles now, just on polycaps there, so they can be removed after. And we're going to call that a conclusion to part 3. So thank you very much for following along up until this point. Hopefully you can join me in part 4, and we're going to bring the model build to an end. We've got some decals to put on, and some of those annoying smaller items such as aerials, the exhaust stacks, and unmasking the canopy, and that final varnish coat to complete it. So until then, please look after yourselves, stay well, and take care.